Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1405 of our daily content grind. So, we have not done this in a hot minute. This is going to be a video looking back at a obscure Transformers line no one really talks about anymore. But in this case, I feel like it's because of the nature of the releases that no one really talks about this as a toy line in and of itself, because it kind of came about as just an occasional figure every now and then that kind of stood all on its own. So this not being the case, it is its own line. We're going to be discussing it, and that is the figure subscription service from FunPub. Now, these are all of the things that you had to actually be part of the subscription service in order to receive in the mail these occasional figures that would pop up. Now, this is not to be confused with the previous Collectors Club exclusive toys. Now, what we're talking about today is something of a spin-off of that, because if you were subscribed to the Collectors Club prior to 2012, you would get one piece a year of the character you see in front of you, Nexus Prime, not the other name they almost used. And a few other exclusive things like that. We'll cover that another day. We are looking at the evolution of said service where, yeah, like you pay a yearly fee, they would just send you all of these different toys that they came up with. So we're going to take a look at all of them because it's a fascinating batch when you look at it, the whole thing. And that starts with the first release, and they started strong. It is Scourge using the Thrilling 30 G2 Optimus Prime Deluxe figure. Can you wrap your head around the fact that Hasbro allowed their licensee to do Scourge from the first G2 based Optimus Prime toy since G2? It's a little bit crazy, right? Like like I'm making an exception here. You're gonna point out the Spy Changer. I mean, full size, fully realized, brand new, modernized toy. It would still take even Takara 2 more years before they would even do their own Black Convoy out of this mold. Weird, baffling. Gorgeous figure, by the way. Absolutely gorgeous figure. I kind of blame this one for the reason why sometimes the RID version ends up with red windows, because in his chest specifically, because with this version of the mold, there was absolutely no helping that. Looks beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I got this as a gift from a fan. I still have it. It's an amazing little toy to have. This was followed up by what I feel is one of the best reuses ever, Slipstream from the first edition Starscream from Transformers Prime. Brilliant, brilliant. That toy is already designed to be very sleek, svelte, so when you take the hunch out of its back and just let the toy stand upright, it has a very powerful feminine figure to it with a fresh head, perfect for Slipstream. This is still the best Slipstream mold and toy that we have gotten, by the way. It's not a dolled up Windblade retool or anything. This works incredibly well. Incredibly well. Still love this toy. The next up was Circuit, based on the Action Master. This one's a Technicolor travesty. This one, it's always hard to parse because it's using the Axor version of Revenge of the Fallen Lockdown, and it's just way too spiky and mean of a mold to really fit the G1 character. It just looks too weird. It looks too mean to pass for it. And yeah, the vehicle mode paint job is just way too chaotic. This is very Euro G1, but not done in a way that really invokes that. But not correctly anyway. Yeah, I've never been a fan of this one. I've never been a fan. I do not think that mold suits that character or the colors in the least. This one's hard to argue. G1 Breakdown, using the retool of Universe 2.0 Sideswipe that they did G2 Breakdown from. That one's kind of obvious. It's a very easy one to do. they had access to the mold. They already made a G1 style head for it. Might as well, right? It's kind of funny to take the original BotCon exclusive and rewind the concept back to his original color scheme that they never did on the original figure. So kind of a neat little trick to pull. Still, kind of on the easy side. Doesn't really have the same imagination as that Slipstream, does it? Now, moving on. Jackpot. Using animated jazz. So always cool to add to the animated roster, right? And we got further jackpots based on jazz, I think kind of based off of this figure. Aside from the weird way they did the head that made it look really bad, actually not a bad idea. And this is pretty. This is super pretty. I kind of like the fact that like the vehicle mode's color scheme absolutely reads Decepticon, but is very much an Autobot character, kind of opposed to the way Circuit looks. Whereas he's like, this one is super smooth and dark looking in vehicle mode. Circuit is like super spiky and harsh and super bright. Both Autobots though. I don't know, it's an interesting parallel to me. And then the king of that series, this first year's worth, was Ultra Mammoth. I love how they worked this, right? So they could have just made him a snowy white mammoth and just called it a day. Add some blue accents to the robot mode, boom, it's the White Cab Ultra Magnus. Instead, they mixed in some of the armor form of Magnus, not to the point where they're forcing the character, just enough to invoke it, and they mixed it in with that White Cab Optimus so the head makes sense. What comes about looks like a character who could be his own version of Ultra Magnus. It's similar to how Beast Wars Megatron is his own Megatron. Just sharing a naming convention more than anything. In canon, it is G1 Ultra Magnus, but it's a very cleverly done figure. And a really good looking one at that. Yeah, we do have listings for a new big convoy coming out. I think everyone's hoping that this is the retool at some point, because this would be super neat to get again. Okay, moving on to year 2. Starting off strong, we have Barricade redone from Prime Smokescreen. This is one of the things that makes me love the idea of redoing movie characters using more standard Transformer designs. And Prime has always been that thing that feels like how the animated or how the movie characters should have been designed in the first place. So they weren't so overly complicated, but they still look new and futuristic. So this looks brilliant. This looks absolutely awesome. I love how this one looks. I will say specifically, there is a Prowl retool of that Smokescreen. That's the one it's repainted from, just so no one starts attacking in the comment section. However, they also threw in this. So this was starting around the time when we could get the ARMS Microns thrown in, and FunPub loved using the ARMS Microns to fill out these guys. So you actually got a little weird version of Frenzy to kind of fill it out and complete the two characters. Kind of neat, right? So there's a lot of extra like throw-ins from here on out. See, moving on, we have Fissatron from Swindle from the Fall of Cybertron toys. I've never liked the mold, but Fissatron, or Iron Fist, if we could use his original name, he's a character that's very hard to get made into a brand new toy. Like, there's been actually a surprising number considering how obscure the character is, but this was, I don't know, this was a little bit ill-fitting. I think people were just happy that Iron Fist got a little bit of love, right? Also sucked that like it was part of a combiner team, so like you couldn't really throw this in. Like, this was meant to be an addition to the retool they did that was based on the Wreckers. So this is like just like an optional piece. If you wanted to substitute somebody in with Fissatron, you could do that. Not a terrible idea. Now, you want brilliance? Year 2 is when we got Thrustinator, what I still call one of the best retools of all time. This thing is absolutely genius to take the Thrustor mold and retool it. Oh, sorry, Dirge Gun. Let's get this right. It's Thrust, so I'm thinking Thrustor. Wrong one. Dirge Gun. We'll take Dirge Gun's mold and we'll actually we'll use those mechanical parts to represent, the technical side. The original Thrust Viacon. Genius figure. Absolutely genius figure. Like the smartest and best retool I've ever seen, ever. Simply put. Treadshot and Catgut. Now, this was cool because I love this mold, and it's criminal that Hasbro never reused it at retail because it's a really, really good toy. And this is the one that kind of sold me on the idea of doing Warpath into Treadshot given the opportunity. And this is also where we start getting a lot more Action Master homages with their partners. Like Catgut is again an Arms Micron figure and fully rendered as his actual transforming weapon. Super cool to do. It gets a little bit weirder though. So we also got Chrome Dome redone from Prime Wheeljack, and this is to invoke his IDW design, and it fits pretty well actually. Like obviously it's not quite there, but as a quick substitute, as like a little patch in, it's actually a pretty good job. I'm actually really happy with how this one came out. So good on you. Good on you. I'm happy with I thought this was a really good use of it. Now he did get a semblance of his headmaster with a Arms Micron of Stylor, except now he just turns into a weapon. So he turned the headmaster into a target master. So there is that. But if you're going to do IDW Chrome Dome, there's no way that you're not going to do Rewind as well. Rewind being a brand new head sculpt on the what was going to be a Generations Rumble and Frenzy mold, but ended up only coming out in Japan. Considering they are designed to look like cassette bots in robot mode, perfect use, absolutely perfect use. They tried to keep an extra figure a mystery, but if you're going to do Rewind, obviously Eject. Oh my god. Eject was going to be on the way too. So they tried to keep that one as a surprise figure. It was like the most well-known surprise ever. But still, that's year 2, and year 2 is extremely solid. There's a lot of really cool figures in there. Couple weird stumbles, but for the most part, like the first 2 years of this concept had some incredibly solid ideas that really filled in some gaps for fans and came up with some really fun toys. We start to go downhill a little bit. Year 3 starts with Car Zap, and Car Zap is from a Blocktown idea that Takara came up with, which was going to repaint G2 toys in Japan, combined with some brick-built elements that you could build yourself, kind of like Lego, and it never really went anywhere, which is a shame because there's like design artwork for how I did a whole video for this one, but there's design artwork out there for like entire like rolling aircraft carriers built from bricks that all had like a full transformer like towing the thing. It was super cool as a concept, but never took off. But we had the photos of the concept. It's like literally 1 or 2 photos of Car Zap in existence. So they decided to take Nightbeat of all toys from Thrilling 30 and repaint that into Car Zap. It's not a great looking figure. It's kind of forced, and it's referencing something incredibly obscure that I'm not sure anyone had any desire for. So this is where it gets weird. Credited for including a Creo Black Rock, as well as a brick-built gas pump that could turn into, a missile launcher. That's kind of a neat thing. So you're getting the Blocktown element in there. Not a bad touch. This one gave us Nacelle. I really do not like the concept of Nacelle. I really don't. I'm not big on the color scheme. This is based off of a magazine photo that show prototype toys, like the prototype version of Thrust Wings on a Thundercracker body. It just is a visual example of how they were switching up the jets for the upcoming year. It was never meant to be a character, but we've taken that one obscure photo and we've made a whole new Seeker out of it because of this. And this is like the start of BotCon, just pulling from really obscure sources to make toys that were never meant to exist come to life. And on one hand, I can kind of appreciate that. On the other hand, I'm thinking, this is reaching a level of obscure. I can't imagine someone actually asked for this before it existed. I think you just wanted to use that mold again because it's a surefire sell. Just wait for it. We're not done with this mold. Now, this is also the year that came up with Serpent OR. This is brilliant, by the way. I love the crossover with G.I. Joe, the purple and green color scheme, and the gold. Magnificent. I love how this toy overall looks. I love working in the more Cobra like eyes across the chest. That looks good. The Cobra face. That's clever. And yeah, like if you repaint that Rat Bat head from the Takara version of this mold, yes, it does kind of invoke Serpentor. This is a really clever figure. Again, like this is back to like the first 2 years where like, yeah, this is a really smart use of the mold. And it's a really cool crossover idea. That's kind of neat. Is that robot's crotch the lower jaw of the snake? Yes, it is. Try not to think about it. And then we move into a weird Tarantulas. Now, the clever part of this is, yeah, it's based on his motorcycle alt mode. That's from the Transmetal, though. Not his original colors, which this is, which is kind of odd. Now, in a weird way, I can get behind this as like a Cybertronian take on the original Tarantulas character, because he's not one of those that appeared in Dawn of Futures Past. So that's an open slot. We can work with that. And in this case, it kind of makes sense. It means his Transmetal form actually brought his old vehicle mode from Cybertron back. What do you think about it that way? Is kind of neat. And yes, Arms Micron come to the rescue. He gets his little arachnoids to actually form his claw weapons. Or actually, not even, well, I guess there's claw hands, really. Clever. Again, like there's aspects that are really clever. And then you have this. This is the final usage of the classic Starscream mold. And it is, if I remember the count correctly, use number 31, G2 Starscream. And yeah, again, this one just seems like they want to reuse a popular figure just for the sake of using it. Not all that impressed by that one, honestly. Just kind of exists. Rock, once again with the Action Masters, complete with Gator Raider. This one again is actually, again, in the clever camp. You would think, like, wait, why is a guy named Croc turning into a stealth bomber? That doesn't make sense. Look at the original Action Master. His name's Croc, but he definitely has stealth bomber jet components to him. In particular, a cockpit section on the chest that looks very much like the cockpit here on the IDW Megatron mold. Again, I would call this a really smart repaint. This works really, really well. So credit on this one. So like kind of got bouncing back and forth on this one. The year concludes with Night Racer, complete with Shakar, the new Target Master partner, because that's how these toys worked. Now, the original BotCon, like one of the very, very first BotCon toys was Night Racer, and that was the very first Transformer that was ever marketed as and sold as a female character. So there's some history to it, aside from just being a very old BotCon character. This is also done the way the original was intended to be done. The original design, the original toy ended up with some yellow mixed in, which the original creator, Raksha, never wanted. But this is done correctly. And yeah, Shakar is a rearrangement of the name Raksha to kind of homage the original creator of Night Racer. She's one of those fans crazy enough to have her own page on TF Wiki. That tells you just how chaotic that went. But no, that wraps up year 3, which is kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit. And year 4 is going to be weirder still. This is when Hasbro starts mandating them use current toys, and Combiner Wars was current. So they had to make a combiner. I'm never happy when a company meddles in what a creative aspect of another company is doing. So here we go. We start off with what is actually not a bad attempt at doing a needle nose out of a Combiner War aerial bot. You'll excuse me if I forget which one. These guys all blend together. Point is, not a bad take on it. Oh, and hey, we can get his Target Masters in because we have Generation Scoop to borrow Target Masters from. So, okay, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. And then comes a toy we had to call Garbudge, which I believe is his French name. It's Ruckus. It's Ruckus because we couldn't call him Ruckus for trademark reasons, and this feels very forced in. This is a really kind of rough looking figure. I don't like how the paint looks in the vehicle mode in the least. It just kind of feels like they went with a theme. Now, if you haven't picked it up by now, the theme of this year was the Mayhem Attack Squad. So they kind of had to work with the characters that they had there, and that does kind of mean you have to get Ruckus in. But this is a very rough looking figure. I've never really liked this one. Now, we're working a little bit better with Spinister using the Alpha Bravo mold, and aside from the fact that they didn't retool the head, which means his eyes are just painted on top of the visor from the original head with a bit of blue paint to kind of try and complete it and separate them, it ends up making his face look pretty flat and stickerish. But the rest of it, not too bad. You know, the jet mode, the helicopter mode actually kind of works. Like, this works for me. Doesn't look bad. We're using the exact same 2 Target Masters because they're the only molds we got, but you know, we're trying. Windsweeper. Now, yeah, so again, aerial bot retool, not a big surprise here. Aside from the fact he also comes with a Matrix, and it is the golden green one, the Creation Matrix from Marvel, so good on you, because that will come up here in a minute. It's okay. Again, this is one that actually kind of works surprisingly well. Like, that color scheme takes to the aerial bot mold, especially in vehicle mode, pretty well. So good on you. That one actually kind of works. Bludgeon is a little bit rough for me. Now, I do appreciate them using a mold where you can make that maroon and orange come through, and then the vehicle mode can still be green the way that his original Inner Robots design was green. But he does get weird. Like, why does he come with such gigantic swords? Why does he come with, like, literally the biggest sword accessories you could possibly find? I'm reasonably sure they went with big swords to hide the fact that Thunder Mayhem's head is very visible in his vehicle mode, as the new tooling head does not fit in the location where Bruticus's head was hiding on this Onslaught mold. This one is where it gets a little bit weird for me. I'm also not really a fan of the blended head. They're trying to split the difference between his natural robot head and the Pretender head. That doesn't work for me a lot here. So this comes across a very, like, weird looking figure. Now, I'll show you Thunder Mayhem, but also show you that you have 2 options that you can go with if you want to switch things around. They did an impactor based off of the Rook mold, and I really like the Rook mold, so I'm not against this. You know, it's a weird take on impactor, but it kind of worked at the time, and yeah, like I said, really solid mold, nothing to really argue about there. The other one was a really weird call. Really weird call. We got Blue Streak, but it's Blue Streak. What have you done? Like, what? How did that happen? Were you just trying to be weird? Were you trying to be contrarian? Because, like, the idea here is that it's a retool of the Prowl figure that they did for Combiner Wars. Not even a retool, repaint. Because it's available, it's just there, let's just do it. You know, one of those like easy figure to make, just fills out the year's worth of toys. Whatever. Why blue? Why not just make him silver like he's supposed to be? I don't know. It's an odd call. It's a very odd call. Now, we're going to have to get back to these in a minute because we got to talk about, I'll show you, before we move on to the final year, I will show you the Thunder Mayhem combiner that you were supposed to make out of all of these mishmash figures, complete with a Thunder, oh my God, why did I blank on his name? Thunderwing, complete with a Thunderwing head that is just awkwardly floating there on the ball joint. I do not like how this head looks on this body. It looks very out of place and very forced. It's a very weird combiner. I get the idea of making the Mayhem Attack Squad a set of combiners. That actually has some merit to it. But why is Thunderwing just reduced just being the combiner head? Like it's so ridiculous. Like, and not even in a way that makes me go like, huh, ridiculous in a way I like, and it seems fun and weird. No, this just seems really odd. This seems really odd to me. Now, we're going to talk about the last year to finish up, and this is where you have to understand that they were under a lot of weird situations. So they were going to release these the same way, but FunPub was in imminent danger of losing the Transformers license, meaning they had to rush these guys out in multi-packs. Instead of getting one at a time, you would get 2, 3, even 4 if they had minifigure partners, all crammed into the same box together. So you ended up getting 3 shipments that year and huge boxes of all these exclusive toys. We will still talk about them one by one, though. It starts with Fractal, another homage to an old BotCon toy, which it's very forced in on a Combiner War mold. I'm not a fan of that. It's what it is, though. Comes packed in with a little Scorponok figure, which is supposedly supposed to complete your Predacon cast for Dawn of Futures Past. Like, it's just kind of like a last little nod to that series, to that particular BotCon set. They decided for the last anything they would get out there before losing the license, here's just a Scorponok just so you can finish it. And I believe that they chose the mold because it was there. It doesn't even particularly fit the character very well. It just happened to be available, so they just ran with it. Let's see. Okay, it's a little bit out of order here, so let's hop over here. You're getting Lifeline from the Thrilling 30 RC. Not an unexpected thing, but again, quick repaint. You also got Quickslinger, a little partner figure for her, which she's never been known for, but it was another figure that you got. Don't really have a history on Quickslinger in this case, so can't really help there. It just seems like a random pair of repaints to throw together. Here's where things get even weirder. This year was very weird and like we're out of ideas. Double Pretender Optimus Prime with High Q partner. Truck and Monkey. This again feels safe. This feels like they just wanted to do an Optimus Prime before they left. And yeah, it's an Optimus Prime retooled from Swerve. Did you ever think you would hear those words? Well, here you go. So yeah, they did that Oilmaster Pretender. This was their way of retooling it for another use. And this is, let's get this straight. No one ever asked for Optimus Prime to be a Pretender. Nobody. No one ever asked them to combine Truck and Monkey. You know why we got this? We got this because the mold that they made for the BotCon exclusive was so ridiculously expensive to produce. They had to get a second use out of it somehow, so they just threw an Optimus Prime Pretender out there into the world. Weirdest idea they've ever had. But then they have to go, well, he needs a Megatron, so we need to do a Pretender Megatron now, but there's no mold left. We can't make another big mold. Don't worry. We have a Pretender mold. So it's the combined. So it's that little. It's that Legends class Megatron mold, complete with space warp for some reason. That little shuttle based on, and then repainted to look like that what was going to be that exclusive repaint of Armada, the Armada Jetfire, but instead it became Astro Train. That was a whole kerfuffle. This shell is from Grand Maximus. And I feel that somehow sullies what is otherwise supposed to be a pretty legendary piece of Transformers history. I mean, the mold was available because like they were doing, I believe this is when they were trying to reissue Grand Maximus. So the mold was in existence. They had found it. I don't think, that reissue never happened, but the mold was found so they could use it. And yeah, because it's meant for Cerebros, it's meant for a big head, it'll fit a Legends class and a little Target Master guy. Weird. Super weird. Let's finish it off. Let's keep going here. So they did Toxitron. This is again just diving into repaints, and this is again with a brand new combiner because that was still a thing. It's fine. I mean, I'm honestly not totally against this mold being a Toxitron thing. Toxitron's supposed to be the G2 design, and we've had those, but there's something about like him being just like this hulked out mutant version of Optimus Prime that kind of does it for me. Kinda. One of the strangest releases they had ever done, FunPub, across all their stuff. Counterpunch. From a Combiner War mold that I don't like in the first place, that they'd already used for BotCon twice over. And this does not change to Punch. It's just Counterpunch. It's just the Decepticons side. Why? And they label it as former double agent. So I'm assuming the backstory to it is he's just now decided to go full Decepticon and Punch no longer exists. Whatever. It's a bizarre idea to take the defining characteristic of an obscure character and completely strip it just for the sake of doing this random figure. Again, who asked for a Counterpunch that didn't turn into Punch? I don't think anyone did. And we wrap it up with what I feel like is probably the most desperation I've ever seen from BotCon and FunPub. Keeping in mind, this was very late in the game. This was very last minute because they were about to lose a license and they just had to get enough toys out there. Shattered Glass Starscream redone from the Aerial Bot retool that became Ghost Starscream in Japan. It's just a mold that was available, and they did the most popular of the repaints that they had ever done, Shattered Glass, on this mold. It feels very, very forced. The mold already doesn't look like Starscream. It certainly doesn't look like Cybertron Starscream. This is just, yeah. So you can tell, like, last year I feel is very rushed, and it definitely does not have the spark of creativity that previous years had. Part of that was because they needed to adhere to Hasbro wanting modern combiner molds used, which, by the way, your combiner was supposed to be Wreckage. It's supposed to be based on Toxitron. You're supposed to throw in like the two previous spare combiners in, that being like Blue Streak and Impactor. How they would have gotten along with Toxitron and, Fractal, I have no idea. No idea. But I don't think the last year was very good. But I also don't want to hold it against them too much because they were under the gun and they just kind of had to produce what was available. It's whatever. But yeah, like, this was a fun idea, but just the execution was hit and miss. Sometimes they hit on genius concepts, and other times it was just felt like things they threw together. And you could see as the years went on, and, Hasbro mandates aside, I just feel like it lost a lot of the spark that made it really fun in the first place. I also think theming it on year 4 took away a lot of the surprise and a lot of the fun, you know? Like, you look at those early years and how random and assorted those characters are. That's a lot of fun. And you're going to get some really interesting toys out of it. Then to start going into like themed years, and we're like, okay, I'm going to get okay, so we're doing wreckers, so I'll get a bludgeon, I'll get a ruckus. Kind of know what I'm in for. Like, so I feel like I wouldn't mind this as a concept again, so long as the spirit is in that first year, those first 2 years, where like you had some really, really surprisingly good stuff coming down the pipe. So that's your look back at an obscure Transformer line. We don't really talk about it anymore for varying reasons, but they are out there, and yeah, as they are, some of them very much worth remembering. So let me know which one you like the best out of everybody. There is a lot. And that'll do it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.